My precious. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. For anyone new, my name's Dave, and today I'm going to be working on a large canvas of Smeagol, aka Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, one of my favourite movies of all time, and I absolutely love Smeagol as a character. Over the years, I would have mainly drawn fantasy horror, sci-fi kind of stuff, and in the last couple of videos I haven't really kind of touched any of that, so I really want to just have as much fun as possible and create something that's kind of close to me. In this case it's a fantasy themed canvas. I titled this video Masterclass in Charcoal, and the reason for this is I cover pretty much just about every technique that I'm aware of in producing this canvas. So I am using makeup brushes, I'm smudging with my finger, I'm using tissue paper, I'm using erasing techniques, I'm using it's endless, but I will explain pretty much everything I do. Also, I just wanted to touch upon as well, so my new keyboard arrived and I decided that I want to kind of create my own music for these videos. So the track that's kind of playing in the background, I actually put that together myself, which was a bit of fun. I had about 2 hours to throw something together, so yeah, I hope it's not killing you with that bit going in the background, but given the time frame, it's the best I could do. But I'd love some feedback on it. Just drop the comments below in the comment box. Nice one. So I'm using, I would have initially I would have got one of my charcoal blocks and grinded it all down into a fine powder, and I use this powder as my medium for pretty much the whole drawing. In an area like the eye, I do go in with my charcoal pencil, and you can see there I just kind of roughly sketch it out, and then I get my smallest makeup brush, and once you kind of brush the charcoal kind of pencil, you get these beautiful tones. So don't worry too much when you're using charcoal pencils, especially if you're working with brushes as well, because the brush will just kind of blend it and smudge it out. I see a lot of people out there, I can't get my head around it. It's just it's working so slow, and it's almost like a printer, you know. Like if I wanted something printed, I just send it to the printers, you know. For me personally, it's about being as loose as possible, being as creative as possible, not being afraid to get messy. You know, this is all part of the process. But maybe I'm just a wee bit different. So I'm just using one of my medium makeup brushes, and it's a soft brush, so what that allows me to do is it allows me to just kind of brush it out and get nice little gradients, while the finer little brush would be more for the detailed areas. It's a hard brush, so it does press the charcoal into the canvas a lot more. So always bear that in mind. Small hard brushes are just for the more detailed areas like the eye, or for doing textures on the skin, and then obviously the more medium brushes that are softer, that's just for blurring and spreading charcoal. And the bigger the brush, obviously what I'm using here is for just kind of brushing out large portions of the drawing. I'll be doing this for the next wee bit now, just trying to cover as much of the canvas as possible, and I'm kind of building up the contrast at the moment, but I'm not too worried about solid black just yet. The charcoal dust I'm using is a black, but once you brush that into the canvas, it'll look like a grey. And this is actually a really good way to work, because you have a nice kind of, I'd say it's a tone up from a mid tone, so it's almost your darkest tone, and that's good because that will allow you then to apply solid black on top of that at the very end of the drawing. I've really been procrastinating a lot on producing this particular video. I don't know. I was so burnt out from doing this drawing. A lot of work was into producing one of these canvases, and I really just wanted to have a day or two off, but I couldn't because I think once I started uploading the YouTube, it's almost like it becomes obsessive. I feel like I have to upload every week, but it can be quite difficult at times because it does take a lot out of you to produce a piece of work like this in the time frame, and yeah. I'm complaining about, like what am I complaining about? Uh, yeah, that's typical, isn't it? Complain about something you love doing. I could be doing a lot worse things in life, that's for sure. You can see where the drawing is there at the moment. I think maybe a few years ago, if I had been working with this just with the way the tones are, I would have been happy with that. But I really like to push myself. So when I think a drawing's finished, I know it's not finished. And what I'll do is I'll call it quits for the day. I'll go home. I'll have a bite to eat, a nice shower, have a nice rest, and then I'll come back into the studio the next day, and I'll see it with fresh eyes, and I'll just go back at it, and I'll continue this for a couple of days until I actually can't do anymore, And yeah, and before something, a wee bit of advice before you set out on doing a large canvas like this, have a goal in mind. What type of drawing you're going to work for? Are you going for hyperrealism? Are you going for a realistic drawing? Are you going more abstracty? Have it in your head what outcome you wanna produce, and by doing this, you'll know when the caller quits. In this particular drawing, I want a fairly realistic, but I also want to keep it that kind of almost like CGI kind of look. So it's actually like coming out of the drawing board itself. Yeah, so I use a technique I would have used in one of my previous videos. It was in one of the earlier videos about kind of almost getting an airbrush look. So I'm trying to create that airbrush look, but also I'm applying a texture on top of the airbrush look to give it almost like a realism outcome. For doing the strands of hair, I get my smallest makeup brush. It's a very hard brush, and I just draw in loose lines, and I'll get my charcoal pencil. And this is a little trick when you're using the hair, especially on a big scale like this. I want to give the impression that a lot of the hair is blurred, and then I want to have little strands of hair kind of coming almost on top of the blurred hair. So what I'll do is I'll just very, very lightly, I'll get my charcoal pencil, and I'll just, I'm not really copying the image here, but I'll just draw in loads of little strands of hair. Then I'll get my makeup brush and I'll blur everything I've just drawn, I'll blur it out, and then I'll just keep repeating that process, just layering up the hair and layering up the hair. And it mightn't come across in the actual video, but when you look at this in person, you'll see all those little strands of hair, some in the distance, some in the front. If you look at the right of the image there is two lines. That's not actually hair. My paper, when it arrived, it was actually damaged, and yeah, it's just some of the damage on the paper, but I do my best to cover it up towards the end of the drawing with some darker charcoal. just as I explained for doing the hair, I'm going to be using the exact same technique just for doing the wrinkles in the skin. And obviously, bearing in mind, Gollum is actually, I'm not going to call him Gollum, it's Smeagol. Smeagol is a character from Lord of the Rings, so it's a fantasy character, so we want to almost over exaggerate all the details. And I'll do this later in the drawing with using the eraser. And I'm actually going to share some of my top secret tips on erasing uh, later in the video. Okay, we'll get to that bit. So I do use a couple of different types of charcoal pencils. Some are hard, soft, medium pencils, and I use a couple of different brands. I do recommend going out and just buying as many charcoal pencils as you can and just keep experimenting until you find the pencils that suit you best. Some pencils are great for doing details, others are an absolute disaster, and some work best for brushing. Okay, what I said there earlier was what I'm doing here now is actually this is a really cool part of the drawing. So I think a lot of people would have been happy with the tonal structures already there, but me being me and being quite obsessive, I'm not happy. So I get out my charcoal sticks and I want solid black. You know, when I look at that drawing, there has to be solid black on the canvas and there has to be pure white, the ultimate contrast, you know. So this will really make the image pop when it's finished. So because I've gone in there with the solid black, I just want to blur that out. Now at this stage in the drawing, when you're spreading out that charcoal that you just put down, you also want to be creating details and textures. So every time I bring that brush out, I'm creating little brush strokes, you know, cross hatching techniques, and yeah, like, you know. So, by the way, back to the masterclass. Initially, I was just working with charcoal powder. The second kind of technique would have been using uh, my finger there to spread out the black, and I will be using my finger a lot more, especially on the forehead. Now, I don't know, if you want to pause that and go back to before I applied that black and have a wee look, and then come back to where we are now, look at the difference that contrast has created. That's why by spreading the charcoal out with the makeup brush, it has a dark grey, but that's still not the darkest tone. And when you apply that next tone, wow, it's coming off the page. I'm finished the drawing, and even looking back on it, I'm kind of going like, oh, that's kind of cool. But yeah. There we go. So this is, yeah. I think when people start using charcoal, I know when I started out using charcoal, I would have just done a lot of my images just with my finger, and yeah, you get beautiful tones as well when you spread charcoal with your finger, and then another masterclass trick here is get your tissue paper and then just blend and blend and blend and blend. The blending process in this drawing is never ending, to be honest with you. So yeah, and yeah. By the way, you can create texture as well with the tissue paper, depending on how you kind of wipe it over the canvas. So you'll always be getting little textures. You can see here I'm going back and I'm just adding a little bit more of hair into the foreground, and I'll do this a few more times towards the end of the drawing. Now I'm just looking at it like it is possible to bring this drawing to a whole entire another level, but just come back to what I said. I had a goal in my head before I started, and I could almost visualize how I wanted it to look. But yeah, so we're moving on to the highlights now. This is when you're drawing, like this is pretty much the final stage in the drawing. So I use my erasers pretty much the same way as if I was using my brushes. It's almost like I'm painting with the eraser. Now, one of my top secret tips ever is I use a Stanley knife on my erasers. So I buy a load of cheap erasers. So my good erasers are for the kind of proper erasing, if that makes sense. And then I buy a load of cheap ones. And what I'll do is on the side of the eraser, I'll use my knife, and I could cut in like maybe loads of little triangles into the edge of it. And if I run the eraser over the skin, obviously just the little triangles it's going to erase. And if I kind of squiggle the eraser when I'm doing this, this will create more texture, you know. I can't believe I just waffled on there for nearly 15 minutes. But anyway, we just came to the end of the drawing. But yeah, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this particular drawing. If you want me to shut up in future videos, just let me know. But yeah, I'm all about feedback, you know. So just give me some feedback as well on maybe how I can kind of go about it a wee bit different. But again, overall, very happy with this. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, give me a subscribe. Kind of it helps boost the channel in the early days, gives me a bit more confidence, and makes me want to upload more videos. But thanks a million for watching, and yeah, see you in the next video. Rock and roll, my precious. Also, there will be a link there somewhere on the screen to go back and watch the previous video. Recommending back and watching it just in case there are some little things I haven't covered. See ya.